Well, good morning. I'm going to let you continue to eat, but I'm going to ask for your attention as we begin things. We have a lot on our schedule this morning, wonderful voices that you're going to hear from, and a chance for you to talk around tables as well, so we want to get started. Welcome to our Working Women with Purpose brunch, and again, I'm excited to hear from our panel today that we have 4 women who will speak on this topic as we consider together the important area of what it means to consider God's calling in our everyday lives, in work and beyond. I wanted to note that this event is sponsored by Bethel Seminary, along with our in-house Bethel Alumni Relations team, and also Thrivent Financial. And the funding for this also comes from our Kern grant. The Kern Foundation has a strong desire to see schools like ours who train ministers, leaders in the community, therapists, really help the people they work with understand that God is in the midst of their work, that somehow we need to get past the divides of sacred, secular, and think more holistically about our lives as Christians in what we do so much of our week, in our work week. And on that note, there's a number of books and things you'll be seeing in front of you. I want to mention the Little Work with Purpose booklet that Dr. Glenn Scorgi, myself, and Dr. Paul Ferris produced last year, Biblical and Theological Perspectives on Work, funded by the Kern Foundation. Just a little booklet that might be helpful to you. And as we think about that array of people I just mentioned that are helping us today and sponsoring our work, I wanted to introduce from Thrivent Financial, Claire Trong, who's a representative with that company. Thrivent is a company passionate about working with Christians who desire to have a better relationship with their money, which I think is an interesting phrase, better relationship with their money, and to protect the ones they love. Thrivent is a Fortune 300 company. It's been around about 112 years, currently serves over 2.3 million Christians nationwide. Claire's going to just say a word as we get started this morning.
Good morning, all. So Jeannine already spoiled the secret. I was going to come here to share a secret with you all, but it's already out there. And I was so excited to see a couple faces of people in the room who are members of Thrivent. So for those of you who are hearing about Thrivent today for the first time, we are the largest Christian organization that you've never heard of. And we are on a mission to help you all be wise with money. And why do we want to do that? Because we are called to live generous lives. And if we have been good stewards, and if we are making those wise choices, we can live from a place of abundance. So if we think about our financial lives on a spectrum, kind of moving between a place of barely surviving, struggling, stable, secure, to surplus, our goal through what we do with our teams of certified financial planners, through our free educational outreach, is to help find a path forward to get us all to that place of abundance. And that's going to be different for each and every one of us, the strategies it's going to take to get there. So a couple of events to invite you all to today. The interesting thing about being a Christian member organization that's a not-for-profit is that we generate hundreds of $millions of each year that goes straight back to the community. So that's how we're funding all of our educational outreach, and we'll be doing an event here at Bethel in January. It's a women's financial strategy event, so stop by our table, check that out, sign up. And my favorite event of the year will be Saturday, February 10. So if you have your calendar out, please mark that. It's an exploration of women in philanthropy. And we'll be doing exercises to figure out how to best use our time, talent, and treasures to come up with personal giving strategies. And we all put in $25 Thrivent matches, our foundation matches, and we collectively, as a group of women, get to make an impact together to change the life of another woman. And it's a very powerful event, and I would love for you all to join us. So stop by, say hello. I will be leaving early. I'm Claire Trong. This is Nicole Pearson. We are your Thrivent team. Stop by, say hello to Nicole, ask any questions, and enjoy today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. Have a great day.
Thank you, Claire. So I'm going to be calling our panelists up in just a moment. And this morning we're hearing from 4 amazing women. And we have an opportunity to hear something of how they understand God to be at the center of their work. There's a wonderful spiritual direction question that goes like this: where is God in this? The assumption that God is already present and working in all of our lives, including our work lives. These women will be sharing their own journey and their own thinking about this idea of where is God in their work, in their callings. So I'd like to invite them up right now. Theola Campbell, Terry Hightower, Shana Lewis, and Cathy Rempel. Will you welcome them with me? So we're going to start with introductions. It's why I didn't give an extended introduction of each of them. I wanted them to do that for themselves. So if you would tell us about yourselves, who you are, maybe your location, where you've lived, and what your work is, and then something interesting about yourself or something we don't know. Now, many of us don't know you all that well, so that might be a fairly easy thing, but something kind of fun about yourself, if you would.
Let me start. So I'm Terry. Hi. I'm a graduate of Bethel. I graduated from Bethel in 2002 in the marriage and family therapy program. So I am now a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm from the Midwest, so I'm a transplant to California, but I've lived here for about 35 years now. So I work full-time at St. Vincent de Paul Village, which is the homeless shelter downtown. And I also have a couple of part-time jobs. I work at a place called Hannah's House, which is for families going through divorce that are having struggles with that. And I do a little bit of private practice. So something fun about me, I have 3 adult children, and I have 2 grandchildren, which really, part of my self-care, I think, is spending time with my grandsons. They're 6 and 9. And they are so much fun. So that's a big part of my self-care.
Hi, I'm Theola Campbell. I am also a Bethel graduate. I graduated from Bethel, and I've been here ever since. 2 weeks after I graduated, they hired me 17 years ago, and it has been an interesting journey. I am a mother of 4 adult children, wife of 1 man. I'm also a full-time pastor with a congregation here locally. I'm from Chicago, and we've been in San Diego over, which baby did we have? 28 years in San Diego, 32 years in California. What else did you say? Oh, something interesting about me. Everything is interesting about me. There's nothing not interesting about it. Even
Very
my
true.
bad hair days are interesting about me. I walk 5 days a week, faithfully, about 5 miles.
Thanks, Theola.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cathy Rempel. I'm very grateful to be here today. Thank you so much, and thank you for those of you that came out on a Saturday morning. I feel very humbled to be here. My background from a Christian perspective is very close with God. I think I felt God when I was probably 5 or 6 years old, believe it or not. My family went to church, but I took it much more than that. I was the only one to be confirmed, and I started praying on my own when I was a child. Started teaching Bible school and Sunday school as well when I was going through university. Have the great pleasure now of women at Grace Point Church, just down the street from me, to work with. Shana's one of them. And just delighted to be here, delighted to be able to share with you today the difference God has made in my life from a work perspective. I did attend Bethel. I'm going through the program that you take one class every 5 years. So I figure I'll graduate in 3047 or something. I have two different positions that I have in the work world. I own a security company, and it's advanced security. You may have heard of ADT. It's a similar type of organization to that, but it's much more advanced on the computer side and analytics. So I very much enjoy doing that, and I run and own that company here in San Diego. The second organization that I run is more in the corporate world, and it is doing transformational leadership, working in management and being an advisor to executive and owners. So enjoy both of those roles very much. Something interesting about me, I'm kind of boring. I have a cat. I'm from Canada. I enjoy trying new things. I'm up for almost anything, whether it's zip lining, meeting new people, meeting new cultures, travel. So I will end at that.
Thanks, Cathy.
Hi, good morning. I'm Shana Lewis, and I work as an office administrator and a financial advisor for Kelley Shooter Financial Services. I've been in this business for 27 years, since I was actually 21 years old. So you do the math, and I'm still 29 years old. But, I'm married 21 years to that very handsome man sitting right there. I know, yay. We do not have any children. We weren't able to have children, but we have the cutest, most adorable, spoiled, rotten dog you could ever imagine. That is truly our child. I'm from Texas. Grew up in Texas, love Texas, been here 22 years, still think of Texas as home. As Nora was saying, I'm a Texas girl at heart, which is true. So I go home as often as possible. I have the biggest family you could ever imagine anyone could possibly have. Something interesting or unusual about me, I will have to say I was so grateful whoever got the plates that have the little dividers in them, because I cannot let my food touch. It just, God was blessing today. But
That is interesting.
It is, yeah.
Absolutely.
Both my husband and I have quite the adventuresome spirit. We love to travel. There isn't probably a place we wouldn't go or a thing we wouldn't try ourselves, or probably haven't tried ourselves. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Shana. You can hang on to it down there, and we'll see how this goes, and you can just do reverse order if that seems good. So the first question I wanted to ask the panelists is, how do you see your vocation? And for that language, if that sounds sort of seminary language, by that we mean your calling from God in your work. We believe everyone has a vocation that God calls really particularly. So how would you see your vocation in your work?
All of your questions were very interesting. They did feel quite seminary to me.
I apologize, I guess.
No, it's good.
But we're at a seminary, so.
It's real interesting.
So what do
I
we think?
actually fell into my job when I was 21. I just kind of fell into it by happenstance and found that I really enjoyed it, that it utilized a lot of just my natural talents, a lot of gifts that I have, a lot of my interests. I found out that administration at the time, I had no clue. You're 21 years old. You know, you don't always know. So I learned from my experience in that administration. I'm very good at troubleshooting. I'm very good at taking chaos and pulling it into some sort of of order. I have a very patient nature, which my parents and husband may disagree with, but in the workforce, I definitely have that. And I even thought, looking back when I was young, the games I used to draw all my friends into was playing office and playing banker. And I would pull out the Monopoly money and I would loan money to them. And I would invest in my stuffed animals and cookies and things like that. And I would get into my dad's office and I remember the carbon copies. Some of you older people my age would remember, yes, I loved carbon paper. And I would fill out forms and staple things together and organize. So, I think I ended up working what was within kind of my natural DNA and really enjoying it. But what I really got to thinking about with this question is no matter what my vocation is to be, no matter what you do, in this world, I actually thought I'm called to be salt and light. If you ask what my real calling is, no matter what I'm doing, it's to be salt and light in this world. And as a daughter of God, as a daughter of Christ, I bring that into every action and every interaction that I have in my office. It becomes the nature of integrity, how ethical, how patient that does come work into it. My goal is really that when someone has an interaction with me or works alongside me, that God's character is seen, that God's loyalty, his integrity, his diligence, that is seen with what I do, even though I don't mention Jesus throughout my natural day, that character really kind of comes through.
Thank you so much. That's yes,
question.
absolutely. And I appreciate hearing how you are talking, and we'll see if this emerges, but the idea of wiring, that wiring you had from a young age that seems that God really instilled in you and capitalized on. So yes. I don't mean to lead the panel, so I'll just see where our conversations go.
So my calling to my vocation, I would say, came in two different times in my life. The first was at university, of course, knowing all the answers in life at the ripe old age of 17. I decided that I wanted to pursue a career in music. And in Canada, I went to Western, which is a university in London, Ontario. Absolutely loved it. But I remember when I'd be practicing, I'd be looking out the windows, and it felt like I was somewhat in a fantasy world. And the rest of the world were carrying books, and they were out studying, and I thought, I love this. I love being part of the music. I love listening to the choir at Christmas, and they're just singing a cappella, and then they're singing around the piano, and they're jamming, and it was amazing, and the great feelings from it. But I also saw the sheer number of people as well. There were 400 first-year students. And I was very nervous about what am I going to do with this once, in fact, I have graduated. So my second year, I decided I wanted to pursue something different. And being, of course, the non-stubborn person I was now at 18 years of age, I did not want to lose my first year that I had dedicated to music. So there were two fields that I could choose. One was nursing, and the other one was business, that I could use my music as my electives. Well, I really can't stand the sight of blood, and I tend to faint when someone has a needle around me. So I chose business. And I loved it. It became a passion of mine. It did feel like it was written into my DNA. I remember I started my career with Xerox, and 5 years into it, I said to someone, if I was a little girl, 6 or 7 years old, and someone said, what would you want to be when you grow up? I would have said this. And I was selling laser printers at the time, but I loved it. Second time was when I decided to retire from Xerox and start my own consulting company. And I had this all mapped out that I wanted to make lots and lots of money in 10 years. And then I was going to be philanthropic and give back and be nice to people, but I'd make my money and then I would give back afterwards. I realized very quickly that this was not in my hands, it was in God's hands. It was God's perfect will. And in fact, it reversed itself for me. And I became involved in many philanthropic organizations, many organizations in the community, not necessarily from just giving back financially, but giving my time, and it came back to that business piece. And the business side has always resonated with me. It has been my joy. And even with that, I waited to hear from God, am I really following the right path? And I thought somehow I would hear these words, Cathy Rempel, you are meant to be in business. But it doesn't work that way. It's quiet, and you know it every single day when you're bringing joy and meaning and a difference to other people's lives. And that's what I had the opportunity to experience. And that's what I continue to live, and that's why I feel it's my vocation. And I look forward to sharing with you, as I know the other panelists do, of how we bring that into our jobs, into our vocations on a regular basis. But that was my calling, and it's natural.
Thanks so much, Cathy.
Thinking back, prior to salvation, people say, well, what do you like to do? And I would say, I like to study people. And people always have interested me. Why they do what they do, and why they don't do what they're supposed to do. But after salvation, I could see how God was working with me to prepare me to deal with people in my vocation, both vocations here as the admissions. What am I doing? I work in admissions. Yes, I'm the senior admissions
Enrollment counselor?
enrollment counselor. That's what I do. I'm an enrollment counselor
Titles
here,
changed,
and
but-
then as pastoring a church, or being in ministry prior to pastoring a church, because I have a gift to connect with people quickly, to kind of get insight into who they are. They usually have no problem sharing way too much with me, whether I ask or not, because that's part of my spiritual gifting. I'm an exhorter, and so when you're an exhorter, that kind of comes naturally. But I see God moving in and through my life in every step once I came to know who He was, because He has prepared me from day one to speak into the lives of people. And I have two congregations, if I can use that terminology, as the admissions individual admitting people here to the seminary. I get to encourage, I get to inspire, I get to pray with, I get to lead and give guidance to potential students, or even students who have already started will stop by my office for prayer, advice, encouragement. And then as a pastor, that is just part of pastoring. You get to know your congregants, you get to speak into their lives, you get to lead, you get to direct, you get to inspire. And so I can see my vocation as a pastor, my vocation as a admissions counselor, working for the kingdom. So if you ask me what I do, I would just simply tell you I am a kingdom worker.
Thank you. Terry.
Yes, that thought that God prepares us from day one for what we're going to do, and sometimes it changes over time, but we're always prepared for the next thing. In grade school, I think I was the one sitting on the steps talking to other grade school kids about their problems. I started babysitting when I was in 5th grade for the neighborhood kids. I love children. So in addition to being a therapist, I'm a registered play therapist. So again, everything in my life has led up to what I'm doing now. And the way I got the job I'm doing now, when I graduated in 2002 and then got licensed in 2006, I applied for so many jobs and went on so many interviews. And of course, I thought I would get them all. And I remember saying, God, I don't know why you keep closing doors here. I don't understand what you want me to do. And then one day it occurred to me, hey, I should look on the CAMP website. That's the California Association for Marriage and Family Therapists. And so I did, and there was a job posting there for St. Vincent de Paul. I applied, and within 20 minutes they called me back. for an interview, and I said, boy, you guys are fast. And they said, well, you're fast. We just posted the job this morning. So totally from God. And I just think that every day, everything I do, God is with me. I'm praying in session when I'm with clients. I'm praying in my mind, God, I know you brought this person to me. What do you want me to do with them? They sometimes want nothing to do with religion. They are so trauma-filled that, their life has just been, they're asking, where has God been in my life? So I don't know, but I'm here to help you now. One time, a man who had relapsed many times came to my office, and he said, I'm embarrassed and ashamed. And I said, you know what, there's no judgment here. I'm just here to help you. And he said to me, Terry, no one in my life has ever shown me the grace and forgiveness that you have. And I was able to say, that's only a small snapshot of what God would show you. So it's thrilling to me to be able to be used by God, and I feel like I am every day.
Thank you. Thanks so much. The theme that we started to hear with Shana really has proven true, right? That there's this preparation and it's who you are, who you're wired to be. And it doesn't mean that just sets this course that never changes. I heard from Cathy, I've heard from Terry, all of you really, that this can change and morph, but there's this sense of God has wired me, prepared me. The other theme I hear in these initial answers is the idea of discerning, that listening for God, sometimes God doing things and we might not even know it's sort of God doing it, but there's this sense of change of course, and we see in our rear view mirror that was God in our life, or listening in the moment, in discernment. And so would one or two of you want to briefly comment on either of those themes, and then we are going to do some table talking a couple times during our session, so we can chat with one another some of the things we're initially thinking about as we're hearing these wonderful voices. So just a couple of you responses to those themes we're hearing amongst each other.
Well, I'll touch on the God's changing your course. I didn't share, but my educational background is in mechanical engineering. It's my bachelor's degree. My master's is in theological studies, and I'm playing with a doctorate. That's all I will say about that. But my goal was to get into a company, do engineering, and just use all of that because I'm very analytical. I'm very logical about many, many things, and there's got to be a reason why that this is about, whatever it is about. But I can see how during my life, God has directed me in different paths to get me where I am here today. So nothing that happens to us is wasted in kingdom work. No matter how good or how bad, it has a purpose. And what we have to do is discern what that purpose is. And so as God directs us in different ways, despite our plans, many are the plans of man, but it's God's purpose that prevails, we have to eventually embrace God's purpose. And so as he redirects us, hopefully we'll get in step with him, because the longer we fight that movement of God, the longer it takes us to get where we'll be the greater blessing for the kingdom.
That's great. One more, and somebody want to comment?
God informing me what makes me maybe a little bit different, how I bring God into my discipline, into work. It is completely changing from the moment I said I was going to go into music to going into sales. Sales led into various leadership roles, which led into starting my own company. Started in sales, marketing work, business plans. Then I rolled up my sleeves and worked with people to help them implement it. And I quickly realized I was becoming a change agent with organizations. I would walk in and I would be the face of change, the face of transition. I feel very blessed that God has given me skills to be able to listen and be compassionate with others. And when you are going through transitional times, it is so important to watch all the faces around the table. Who is excited, who is scared, who is being quiet, to treat everybody the same, to realize we are all part of one circle. And Romans 12 hits so hard for me all the time. I just feel like I truly care, remember, and live it. And it's listening to others. It's saying hello to the janitor, and it's saying hello to the president, and treating everybody the same, because as we are part of that circle, and one thing that I share and I teach with people is that if I think I'm so great because I'm an executive and I'm going to start doing Shana's job for the sake of argument, I've just broken that circle. I'm not doing my job, and I'm doing Shana a disservice by thinking that I know more than she does. And if I decide I'm not going to do my job at all, I've also broken that circle. So we are all members of the same family. We are there. And I really try and bring that out and watch that in others. I really care. And it's not just about being in the work world. Somebody leaves the company and they're going through something that's distressful in their company. I don't mind picking up the phone and being their friend and helping them through that. It's what makes us different in what we do, what we find passion and what we find love with. And whereas I have been business focused, everything has come from that piece of it. Being humble, a lesson that my father taught me very quickly, is Cathy, you might know something about a subject, and when you walk in and you're advising people, you're consulting with people, don't try and be a know-it-all with everything. It's always best to be the best first learner than the worst know-it-all. And so to remember these life lessons and what other people have taught me and to bring it forward, and that's why I feel it's my vocation of really listening and bringing God's word into what I'm doing.
Thank you, Cathy. Let's take a few minutes at the table, about 10 minutes or so. And so I've taken that second question that I asked about vocation and just put it like this. How does your relationship with God influence your work? You can take that from whatever angle seems helpful, but how does your relationship with God influence your work? So go ahead and take about 10 minutes or so around tables, and I'll call us back together, and we'll move further. just a note that if you're interested in grabbing more food or drink, please do that at any point in the time. So I'm going to ask you to finish your conversation at your table, or pause it at least. So we're going to do a pause here and come back together. I'm loving the energy I'm hearing around tables. This is wonderful. So we're going to go to a question related to how our panelists understand their work as contributing to human flourishing, to God's work in the world. So how would you say, and we've heard a few themes around this already, but let's hear what you have thought about this. How does your work, the particular work you do, contribute to God's work in this world, to human flourishing?
So mine's kind of easy. I work at a homeless shelter, and I'm caring for people all day. Again, I just think that non-judgmental, compassionate presence is what God prepared me for and what is helpful for their flourishing.
Two examples. One, as a pastor, how I contribute to the flourishing is through one of the young ladies in our congregation was one of those individuals who was very intelligent, but she just didn't want to be bothered with people, military background, that kind of thing. And she just assumed tell you to go figure it out yourself. But over the years of pastoring her, her office has become a place where people come to get prayer from her. And this is from my badgering her to let God use you. Exhorting, yeah, much better word. Exhorting her to, and mentoring her and journeying her with her for the last 10, 15 years to allow God to use the gifts that you have. He will bring people to you if you will just be open to receive them. And so over the years, she has opened up her office, and men and women come and they just sit and talk. And so I'm really excited about that. So being a pastor, speaking into encouraging, mentoring, you can see the fruit of the work. As a missions counselor, I know so many graduates after being here 17 years, product of my work. Product of my work. She'll eventually get through. But I see the results of graduates that come through this seminary that I was influential in getting through the door. There have been many who didn't think they were worthy, didn't have the GPA, but Bethel is such a welcoming and warm institution that, come on, let's try and let's see what God will do with you here, and don't give up, and let's move forward. And then I see the results out in the workplace, out in ministry. And so what I do here at Bethel has a huge impact on the lives of hundreds of thousands that I have no idea how they're being impacted.
Well said. Flourishing, I think it comes down to two words: listening and caring. When I'm working with people, I very much try and listen. Sometimes it's difficult. We want to be saying what's on our mind. How many of us have been in a meeting or a group of people and others are talking around us and we're thinking, when are they going to stop talking because I've got something really important? So maybe we're not actively listening. But to truly take that time, because when we listen, we can see people's gifts. We can help bring them out, and we can also have people listen to us as well to guide us. I love when people have that opportunity because that's their gift as well too. And to care about the people, to know what's in their best interest. Again, I walk in with transition and change on me, so how do people know that it's going to be in their best interest? Real quick story, I went through a very difficult relationship and ended up leaving that relationship, and I thought it was about me. And 10 years later, I realized it wasn't about me leaving, it wasn't for me, it was God knowing that it wasn't right for me to be in that person's life. So to listen and care about that other person, because our work does overflow other relationships as well. Now this individual who was not able to have children has a child. They are very happy, and take a step back and go, it was for them to flourish. And so it's not about us, it's listening and caring. So I would just wrap it up in those 2 words.
Thank you, Cathy.
In my line of work, it really revolves around, I believe, just helping meet people's needs. I work in finance, so it's basically teaching responsible finance, a lot of what you were mentioning earlier. They have this saying in the sales industry, see one, do one, teach one. And what that really kind of comes down to is you demonstrate it. So we demonstrate it to our clients what responsible finance looks like. Again, it's that bringing that chaos into order, and it does look different for each and every person. So you demonstrate it, you teach it, you walk along beside them as you're helping them help meet their basic needs, and then they can turn around and teach it to their children and their grandchildren and to those around them. So I think it's, again, with me, it's just meeting the basic needs of people. And that can go outside of finance. You find when they come in, they bring everything in, a little bit like you. Sometimes we end up being counselors in all walks of life. And in that way, we could also demonstrate the character of God, his very nature. So that's all.
Thank you. And I hear themes of impact, discipling, kind of the New Testament or Gospels language of making disciples. That some of your work is about helping people do that sustaining thing, whether Theola with your parishioner or Shana with your clients, so that it's generating. There's something that continues to be generated. And then the themes of, the theological themes of grace and kindness and other focus. I mean, there's some really very theological, and we may not always think of these as theological themes, but in a seminary, I want to be very aware that these are themes that God are on the heart of God. And I love, Shana, your idea of bringing order from chaos. I mean, that's what we see in this Genesis creation story, that out of disorder comes order, out of chaos comes order. So this sense of God's work in this world, that's part of it too, in the very work that you're doing, not simply in the demeanor with which you do it, which is certainly part of that, but also the work you're doing is helping flourishing. There are such rich examples that you've been giving. And we could talk as if work is always only positive, and we know that that's not the case. Sometimes we might go into a season of our work life where this is really discouraging or a tough time, or it just feels like we just grind it out. So I wanted the panelists to be able to speak to that a little bit. And actually, this was Theola's offering when we were talking about questions together. So thank you for raising this question. How do you see God's purpose in your work when you're feeling unfulfilled or discouraged? Yeah, Theola, is your question. You're going to start us off.
Well, this is what had happened.
This is a great question, great question.
And I brought that question up from my own experience. As I previously mentioned, I've been with Bethel 17 years, and so I have been through a myriad of changes. Some I thought were beneficial, and some I thought weren't beneficial, but nevertheless, there was a time where I was very discouraged working with the seminary for a number of reasons. And I was begging God to send me a job. I told him I wouldn't leave, but if he sent someone to offer me a job to my office, okay, I talked to God like that, to my office, then I would obey. I would absolutely obey. Nevertheless, that never did happen. And what it eventually came down to is the Lord said to me, "You prayed for this job 17 years ago. I gave it to you. Learn what you need to learn. Get through this, and you're going to be okay." I didn't want to hear that. I wanted the person to knock on my door with a big check and snatch me out of here. But that right along that time came Work with Purpose, the initiative. And I fought that Work with Purpose. I fought it. This could not be my purpose. I am not encouraged. I am not inspired. But as we went through this initiative to talk about work with purpose, I felt the Spirit of God just giving me peace, that you have a purpose here. It's not about what you like. It's not about how emotionally attached you are. And I had a deep emotional attachment to my job in Bethel Seminary. And he said, let go the emotion, because when you're emotional, you can't be effective. And my emotion was so tied up in what I couldn't change that I was becoming ineffective. I was affecting my own job. So once I released that emotion and allowed the Lord to show me the purpose of while I was here and still here, then I had peace about it. And my purpose is, there are still many people that need to come through my office to be prayed for, to be encouraged, to be inspired. That's my purpose with Bethel. So once I embraced that, I started to feel encouraged, inspired, and was able to continue to move forward. So what am I saying? When you're discouraged and when you don't feel like you fulfill, talk to God about it. Because we ask him for things, he gives them to us, and then when it gets a little rough going, we decide that we've had enough, whereas something more he wants for us to learn through that process.
Thanks, Theola.
Wouldn't it be a wonderful world if we never felt any discouragement and we had everything perfect around us? But that's not the way that it works. I have had my consulting company for 17 years now. It's an up and down type of business. You bring on clients. I bring on usually 3 clients a year because I really roll up my sleeves and try and make a difference. So while I'm working in my business, I often don't have an opportunity to work on my business. And when that happens, you go through peaks and valleys. I trust and I believe in God so much. He has consistently been there for me during this time. At times that I thought I was going to lose my home because it was one of the valleys and the business wasn't coming in, he's come through. Something's come through. All of a sudden there's an investment that I didn't realize I had that was going to pay off. Thanks, Shana. If it is a new team member, something that's missing, the doorbell rings, it's about looking up. And you know what? For me, it's also being about looking horizontally and not going through it by myself. Being humble and saying, I'm going through a tough time and I need help. Will you be there? And so to me, it's something that I think is critical to embrace and also something to teach to others as well too, whether we teach it softly or whether we're bringing them under our wing and saying, hey, come to Grace Point Church with me. I want you to be uplifted this Sunday and feel something different than you did yesterday. So doing it together and having the faith to do it with God and knowing that he is there for us.
I got to thinking about this when I feel unfulfilled or discouraged, and I actually wrote down, I'm such a note taker for those. That can be a quirk you could add to my personality. When I'm going through that, usually I find it to be kind of a byproduct of me turning inward instead of up and looking at the bigger picture of things. That was one of the things I notice when I have those feelings. Sometimes I just need to reset my thinking and my attitude and in life, and that goes all the way back to prayer that Theola was talking about. And also connecting with others in Christ and talking things through. I also put down that life can get overwhelming. And I can get discouraged. We're women. Life gets overwhelming. We are such multitaskers, aren't we? Mm-hmm. And they talk about life being in balance, but I've never had perfect balance with things. So, and I'm learning that it's not ever going to be that way. Sometimes I get discouraged when I feel unappreciated. you do such great jobs and you do all this hard work and not one person says thank you. Or sometimes you can do such a great job and you lose the client or all of that. So I was thinking all those things can be part of that feeling of being unfulfilled and discouraged. But it goes back to going into prayer and looking at a bigger picture and realizing who it is I'm truly working for. And I always have to do that each time, and that's where I go. And God's always there. He meets you right there and corrects everything. And it's usually me.
Thanks, Shana. Terry.
Yeah, so I just want to add to that some real step-by-step things that you can follow are absolutely always be looking at your relationship with God. Are you in prayer? Are you having meditation time, Bible study? Do you have a Bible study group that you go to? Because for me, that's really important when life gets tough, and it does sometimes. Having a mentor has just been such a blessing in my life. It's gotten me through a lot of things when things are tough. What I teach my interns is something that we have to fill up our soul if we're going to give, right? And so if we're giving, and we're not receiving from Bible study, mentor, God, things that we have that in our life that add joy to our life, then we're not going to be able to continue to give in a really good way. So those, I say you have to fill up your gas tank if you're going to drive, right? And so we have to make sure that we're doing that in all of those ways. So those are some really practical ways that I do this.
Thank you. So that I love, Cathy, the looking upward, looking outward, the resources we have in Christ and also with community. You mentioned earlier, Terry, self-care, and that's your grandsons are part of that. So that sense of realizing we need community. And we need mentors. We need those who are going to help us. That's very helpful as we think of those discouraging times. I want to tack onto that question. Are there challenges in pursuing your own vocation that come from being a woman particularly? Are there challenges and sometimes potentially discouragements because you're a woman in the area that you serve?
Okay. Well, so for me, again, I haven't had that struggle as a therapist and at a homeless shelter. I've been very blessed that you can advance in this career, whether you're a man or a woman. I'm sure there are obstacles for some, but I have not experienced that.
In my Bethel life, there has not been any obstacles as a woman. If some gentleman had an issue with talking with a woman about theological things, they didn't have a choice because I decided whether or not they got in. So they had to be nice to me, and they could deal with whatever their issues were later with the professors. So in that regards, but as a professional, when I worked for General Motors, I worked for a company that made locomotives, and so it was a 99% male environment for the most part, and there were times that I would go onto railroad properties and I would be, looked at funny, but once again, I had the power, and so they had to, whether they had a problem with me or not, they still had to deal with me because I represented their money. And so I've been put together by God that those kind of things doesn't bother me. So if someone has a problem, let's just deal with while I'm there, and I promise I won't invite you to dinner.
I like that. So I have traditionally worked in non-female-based occupations. The security industry, I'll use as an example. You don't hear too many women that are security company owners. Have there been challenges? Absolutely. The challenges don't last, though. It almost reminds me of you can be a very stunning, beautiful man or woman on the outside, and from a superficial perspective, that might get you in the door, but it doesn't keep you in the door. So I have embraced these professions that have typically been male-oriented and brought out the gifts that God has blessed me with so that people can see that what I am doing is hopefully in their best interest. The past 2 years, I've been very blessed to have been the president of the California Security Association, a role that has traditionally been held by men. And my board of directors, I looked for women. There were not many women to choose from, were men. There are many times in this industry I've sat at tables with men around me. And you know what? I don't notice, because it really doesn't matter. It's what we all bring to the table. So are there challenges? Yes. But it's how we work through those challenges. And I think we need to go back to why we were called and what we bring to the table and how we care and how we bring God's word into what we do day in and day out. So challenges, yes, not insurmountable. And I hope that I do not judge people based on gender, race, age, but what they bring to the table. I hope that I show that, and I hope that I can teach that to others as well too. So I don't know if we'll ever be in a world that there are not challenges for one group of people, but it's what we do about it.
When I started out in this business 27 years ago, I was very young, and in an office of 50, where 45 were men. Basically, everyone I dealt with was men. The only other women that were there were, since I'm almost 50, I can't say they were old, but they were in their 50s, 60s. They were much older. So I wouldn't say it was an overwhelming challenge, but at the time when you're starting out, my age was a little bit of a challenge, and being a woman was a little bit. We had to work a little bit harder. They didn't take you as seriously as a man. That was the way it was. I don't face that at all now, but it was at that time back then. And should I share the other? Okay. The other thing we talked about up here, the common thing that's been going a lot today in the news is the sexual harassment. And although I was never harassed by my coworkers, I was harassed by a couple of clients. And was very young. I would say I don't know how I dealt with it. I did report it, and nothing was done. So they kept the clients, and I really just had to learn how to work around that. In one instance, I had to change my home phone number, and so I can honestly, I really haven't talked about it. I told my husband, I think, a week ago. So there is that to face. I don't know that I have much to say except that in this environment of challenges, we will all have them. I do think it's how we respond to those that is really the important thing. Respond within the character of God. I would say if you do see something or have something, say something. If that person doesn't do anything about it, go to somebody else. For you women out there, I didn't. I just learned how to work around it.
Thank you. Go ahead. And thank you for raising that topic. I do think in our current context, as we think about the number of voices we've heard gain some freedom in sharing the realities that have been a part of their life and might still be a part of their life. The earlier admonition to both focus upward and outward, that we pursue solidarity. We make sure that we, if we can, find safe places to share. And as a Christian community, really the story of the biblical story affirms men and women made in God's image. So this should be something we care deeply about. That, as you've noted, we want all people to be sort of at the table level playing field, and the commitment to hearing women's stories, because it has been, your field's clearly varied, but there's a sense of very male-dominated fields. Some of those issues are still very much at the fore of those places. So let Theola share.
I just wanted to shift back to touch a little bit on the challenges of women in ministry. When I first started, when I first received the call to go into full-time ministry from the Lord, I was in a church where there were no women in ministry. And it was a 4-year journey from the time I told the pastor to the time I was actually licensed for ministry. And so through that entire time, it was God's purpose for me to be there, because I could have gone a number of places to start the process for ministry, but the Lord wouldn't release me from this particular church. And so that 4-year journey resulted in the door being opened for 12 other women to join ministry behind me. I endured, I stayed, I didn't want to, because it's so much easier to walk. But I knew that I was called to ministry, and I knew it was at that particular location. And so I encourage you, if you're in the ministry, whether you're watching us live stream or you're currently seeking as a female, as a woman, a call to do something on that level, and you know that the Lord is calling you, don't give up. Stay true to what the Lord is saying, and then reach out to someone to talk. They may have been through that process already, so that you can be encouraged, but don't jump ship.
And I hear that sense of calling again as an undergirding principle, that we, if we go back to that sense of calling we have from God, there is this ability to get through really difficult places. I was
Knowing your purpose.
I was early on the only woman in the biblical, theological, historical studies area of Bethel, and back when I started, we had 10 to 12 people in that department, 11 men or so, and myself. And I never wanted to be a pioneer. That's not my personality. If you know me, I'm not a pioneer. I'm going to go do everything first. I'd like to sit back and do everything last, usually. But God placed me there, and it was that sense of, God, you've called me to this place, not because my personality is wired to be a trendsetter or out the forefront of making things happen and be different, but there is this sense that this is what I'm called to, and the hurdles were there, and they continue sometimes to be in my field, those hurdles, and wondering, did I get chosen for that because I was a woman? Did I get passed over for that because I was a woman? It's the double bind that it just takes so much mental energy sometimes to figure out, how do I walk with God through that? How will God walk with me through this? So let's take a few minutes at tables, maybe about 5 minutes this time. I know we'll give you 10. Talking about any challenges that you have faced as a woman in the workplace, discouragements, whether that was because of your gender or just because life can get discouraging and work isn't always fabulous. So take about 10 minutes or so and talk at your table about challenges that you faced and what's been important for you in those. And grab more food. Grab more food and drink as well. Thank you. I got emotion as well. I mean, that's how. Yeah, and I'm glad you came back to women in ministry kinds of issues in the church, because whether we are in a vocational ministerial role or not, we have sometimes felt those things as well. So it's interesting that you just told your husband about this. Well, and it's not always right there in the field. It's not like you're always talking about actively. It's just that the opportunity, nobody else is talking about these things necessarily. And then when that becomes no easy feat to bring things forward when there's so much dismissal. And it's just so painful to even speak it.
Working in the railroad, being young, really cute. And so, I mean, there were always advances. And a couple of times I was actually touched, but I knew there was nowhere to go. So what I did was strategically waited till I could embarrass that guy that touched me in front of his people.
All right, just another minute or so, and then we'll pull back together. All right, let's pull back together for our last bit here. And I would like to say we're going to have a little bit of time at the end few minutes at least for question and answer. So be thinking of some questions you may like to ask particular panelists. So we've heard some great illustrations along the way that each of you have given from your field, but I would like to ask for, if you would, one more example of how you experience your work as part of God's work.
A specific example, I say any time that we use our talents and our skills to transform our environment, those around us, talk about flourishing, how we reflect God's character, then I believe we can experience Him in our work. And I think one of the clearest examples I have is my partner of 27 years was a non-Christian. And he experienced kind of life truly with me. I grew up in a Christian environment. I've known and believed Jesus as my Lord and Savior my whole life. But I didn't truly dedicate my life to Him until I was in my 20s. And so the gentleman I partner with, he got to see me life a little bit not following the Lord and what life looked like after I rededicated my life to the Lord. And it impacted my work life. It impacted how I interacted with people. It interacted how I did my work, the quality of my work, just almost every aspect of my work. And he really took notice and started asking questions, and it's always those questions, why? Shana, you acted this way, now you act this way. Because it also impacts your business decisions, everything. And he took notice and really started asking questions and more questions, and then came to church with my husband and I, and ended up accepting Christ. So I think that's one example, and you can have those examples with your clients and with anyone else that you come across with. Again, it goes back to others seeing the character of God in everything that you do and decision you make.
Thank you, Shana. Thank you for sharing that.
My answer will go back to somewhat what I shared of the circle. When I start working with an organization, I share leadership principles that I believe in. And that's part of our vernacular as well, of how we speak. Are we swearing? Are we cursing in the workplace? And not putting up with that type of behavior if it's uncomfortable, taking the Lord's name in vain, whatever it may be. And so I lay the ground rules out, and it helps shape people's lives. I also believe that for many of us, our work can almost become our life, and we need that balance with it. But I mean by this is that we take many of the lessons in what we do from work into our private lives as well. So I've had the opportunity to be around people that were not Christians, were not believers, and just see a difference in caring, people that may have lost their job, and I didn't have to phone them, I didn't have to do anything, but I wanted to, and it was on my heart. Here's the example from that background of what's happened. A few times in my life, people have said, what makes you different? Why do you care? Why are you calling me? The very first time that question was asked to me, I said, I don't know, I just try and do the right thing. Because I didn't have the courage at that time in today's world to say it's because of my belief in Jesus Christ and my following with God and church and Bible studies and what I've been learning. A few years went by and I was asked that same question. And I said, I was asked this question a few years ago and I didn't have the courage to answer it, and today I do. And I shared with that individual what had happened to me in my transformation. That individual never read the Bible, was not a believer. a few months ago, I found out this person's reading the Bible and has become a believer. And that's the example that I would share with you, is that what we are, and when we're true to ourselves and our beliefs and what makes us who we are, and we take that into all aspects, we don't know when it's going to happen, but that example will happen. I'm also a believer to say, God, please show me a miracle today, and we will see those miracles, small or large. So it's being authentic to ourselves, being authentic to God and our beliefs, and watching for what's going to happen around us.
My vocation with Bethel and my pastor vocation often intersect. I think of several students who were struggling with professors and the whole struggle with seminary work and wanting to quit, and they'll stop by my office. And remember earlier I said I used to I thought I was studying people, but I pay real close attention to personalities and the way they do things and what they expect, because there's a reason for how each of the professors do what they do. And so I would get students who would come in and they'll go, I don't understand why so-and-so does it this way, and why can't they do this? And then I can calm them down, explain the personality of the professor, tell them this is what they're looking for, right? And they'll go, yeah. And then I go, just do it. You're not the professor. You're here to receive. So they've given you clear instructions. Just do what they tell you. If they want you to help do something else in their class, they'll let you know. But
bless you, Theola. Thank you for giving that advice to people. Might you talk to all of our classes all the time?
Pastoring comes into my office because we usually pray about the situation, and then I check in like I would my parishioners. And so I gave an example earlier about the young lady in the military, but also the students here at Bethel. I love them, and I'm always open to share and encourage them to stay true to the course, because there's a purpose why you're here, despite your professor.
So I would say, if we use Jesus as our example, Jesus was compassionate to people, and we can be that in the workplace and all of our jobs, and I feel like that's what I strive for. Jesus also knew how to relate to people in a non-judgmental way. Jesus knew how to pull away when he needed rest, and we need to remember that, and to give thanks. And one quick story, I had a man in my office one day, again, homeless man, lots of trauma, and we're talking, and his phone went off. And I said, do you need to answer that? And he said, no, that's just my alarm. And I said, well, is there some place that you need to be? He said, no, I set my alarm on my phone twice a day to remind me to give thanks. So very powerful things, that God puts in my life to remind me, give thanks. A good example.
Wow, that's powerful. Thank you. We're going to give the panelists a chance to give us one final piece of advice, something they'd like us to take from this time, and then we're going to open it up for you to ask a few questions. So, final word of advice that you would give these amazing people in front of you.
So don't give up on your dreams, and be praying about it. God gives us more. My mentor tells me God gives us more than we can ask, think, or imagine. And boy, is that true. And also, just because God gives us answers one dream doesn't mean that's for the rest of our lives. Things do change, they do evolve, they do morph into, but there is a plan. God has a plan, and we just need to follow that.
As we integrate our faith in our professions or our faith in our vocation, I would just like to share, everybody here may not be in the workforce. You may be a stay-at-home mom, or you may be a caretaker, but even those are called from God to be in those positions wherever you are. Share your faith. If you can't share it outwardly, then share it inwardly through prayer. walk in with an air of a representation of Christ. That you are that representation if you're a caregiver, if you're dealing with your children, you're dealing with elderly, or you're going into an office. Just remember who you are and the power you have because you belong to the King and you are a King's kid. And when we act like a King's kid, walk like a King's kid, talk like a King's kid, we don't have to name the King, they'll see him.
Preach
Amen.
It. Preach it.
It's great.
Yeah. No, I love that.
The last thing that I would say is follow your passion when you know it's making a difference to others, when it's in God's name, when we can quietly share and when we can maybe not so quietly share. But it is our passion, and it's about love. It's about love for those around us, love for God. One thing that always stands out to me is you may be in a very difficult situation, but remember that person in front of you. God is either living in that person or working through that person. And I think that is very powerful. And when we look at people that way, our outlook changes. Know that what we have picked up as Christian women and Christians in general, for the gentlemen that are in the audience right now, is part of us. It's the same as we went to school and we have an education, our skills, our DNA from our family. This is who we are. Follow that and be proud of it. And it works in all aspects of our lives. And it's not going to be the way we planned it. It's going to be in God's perfect will and His way. And embrace that and know the lessons that are being given to you are to help us grow. I call it failing forward. And there's always something amazing to be learned in it. So my final advice was be authentic, stay to the Word, and embrace those around you. Make the difference from learning from them and teaching.
I have actually scripture to close with, Colossians 3:23. You guys should probably be very familiar with it. Whatever you do, do your work heartily, as for the Lord rather than for men. I find when we do for the Lord and serve Him, we serve others. Everyone else becomes a recipient of that. And I think that's what becomes very meaningful and very fulfilling in work, no matter what we do.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to come around for another 5 minutes or so and see if there's some questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. And if you want to direct it to a particular person, you can do that. Or to the panel more generally. Questions? Comments? Okay.
Do I have to stand or should I continue?
You can do whatever you like. You have a mic, so you can.
Okay, yes, thank you. I want to say I am so honored to be here at this time and to have been fed what we were. This was needed at this point in my life, because I'm in a situation where I am thinking that after looking over everything, that I haven't fulfilled my life, my calling. But because of their panel, because of you all, I had shared with my table that I have seen through you that I did. I am 73 and I am honored. I'm feeling, I haven't done all that I should. I haven't done all. But then when you poured it out, I saw that I have taken my life full circle.
Amen. Thank you, Claudette. All. Thank you. Powerful. Yeah. When we hear calling as something deeper and wider than this one thing. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Questions or other profound comments? Anything else? Helen, I'm looking at name tag. Helen?
It is a comment. Recently, I've been praying about what to do further in my career, my life, and each one of you said something that just really spoke to me. And I guess he spoke to me through you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Don't be embarrassed. Thank you so much. Other comments or questions? This has hit a deep chord, it sounds like, with many. And we're so glad. Let's give our appreciation to the panel. Let's thank them. I'm going to invite them to retake their seats and finish their cold eggs or whatever they want to do there. And anyway, just a couple final words before we close. First, if this has been helpful and you would find it helpful to connect further sometime in the new year related to women working with purpose, these topics or some specific topics under that larger umbrella, we'll be sending out an email to all those who attended, inviting you to email back with your interests, whether that's something more formal like this or potentially just some space to talk more informally, conversation groups around various topics. So please be looking for that email from us. Another opportunity still today, Natalie Hendrickson, who is our Director of Formation and Supervised Ministry here at Bethel, is also an amazing artist and has developed some of what you see over here, which are our history panels. We recently celebrated our 40th anniversary in September, and around the seminary are these lovely panels that tell the history of Bethel Seminary San Diego. If you're at all interested in a brief tour of those panels and of the seminary, and if you know the seminary already, you may not know that we have put up within the last 3 months or so these additional panels to add to what was there before. If you'd like a tour with Natalie, who was so foundational in bringing those to life, please meet out by the steps here at about 12:10 or so, 10 minutes after the hour, if you'd like a brief tour. Sound good, Natalie? Thank you so much for doing that. And finally, I'd like to invite Jennifer Scott, who is our Assistant Director of Alumni and Family Relations, and herself a graduate of Bethel Seminary, to say a word from our alumni office and also to talk about the gift that's on your table. She's going to close us in prayer as well.
Thank you. Thank you to each of you who shared this morning. I was wishing, I have a 12-year-old daughter, I have 2 boys as well, but especially for my daughter, would love for her to have been here and to start to identify some of the themes and some of the purpose that when she's 73, she doesn't think she wasted a stroke, that it all matters. So thank you for sharing. As Jeannine said, I work in our Alumni and Family Relations office. I also teach part-time for our Biblical and Theological Studies department. Also, one of the earlier Wednesday adjunct as a female, and I also feel the same way you do. I'm not a pioneer. Just thank you for everyone else who has paved the way. So you have paved the way for me, so thank you for that. Our office seeks to develop relationships with parents of students in our College of Arts and Sciences and of alumni in all of our degree programs for our seminary, for our College of Adults and Professional Studies, people who are working on their undergraduate degrees as adults, for our graduate studies programs that are both online and in person, and then of course for our undergraduate College of Arts and Sciences program. So our goal is to engage and to re-engage with alumni for things like this so that they know that we get to keep learning our whole lives long, all of our lives long. And we keep continuing to share in community because we don't do it alone. We get to look to the right and to the left and to see who is around us that could encourage us in this stage in life and maybe help us to get a new job or a new place to fulfill our calling. So it's such an honor to get to work with alumni. So if you are an alumni here, I'd love to meet you before I leave. Thank you again for having me. This morning I was meditating on, let me say a word quickly about your gift. So co-authored by Dr. Jeannine Brown. This book is for you. And I have not read it yet, but I was just reading the notes on the back that it seems to be very readable for the academic and the non-academic environment. So it is our gift to you to thank you for coming. And if there are extras at the table, if there's someone, if you look at the title and kind of read through the jacket, if you think there is someone that just I know in my life that I could really encourage by giving them this book, we would love for you to take this and give that to them as well. We don't have billions of dollars, so don't worry, we're not like wasting Bethel's money, but we just think that it's important for you to have like a little piece of what Bethel is about. And Bethel is about equipping people to become whole and holy in their every single act, in their vocation, in their families, etc. So this morning I was meditating on Psalm 90. And Psalm 90 is a psalm that goes back and forth between the grandeur of God and the hardness of life. This phrase, I was blow drying my hair this morning. Does anyone else have their most maybe profound thoughts when they're doing mundane, like blow drying? Yes, yes. So this psalm came to my mind, and then I read it. The part that came to my mind is this, if I can find it. There we go. Psalm 90, verse 12 says, "Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." All of us are here today because we want to gain a heart and a life of wisdom. And to teach us to number our days is to say, well, this might be our last, but help us to number it. Help us to be purposeful with it. So may we all be encouraged by the people who shared today as they are also numbering their days aright and hopefully gaining wisdom from God. So I'm going to pray for all of us that we might do that. Lord, thank you for the sweet time of fellowship, of learning, and just even sitting at our table, I was listening to the stories, and my heart was just touched as I remember that there are different stages of life where things feel more tender and things feel hard. And then there are sweet seasons where things feel like, whoa, you have just like opened these doors and blown them open wide, and I'm just going to walk right in them and see times of blessing. Lord, whatever stage every single person is here, every person that is in this room, whatever they're in, whether it's a difficult time, a time of sorrow, or a time of shaping that feels too rough, or a sweet season of open space, I pray that you would teach us all to number our days correctly so that we might gain hearts of wisdom, so that with the things that we do, we honor you. Lord, part of the psalm that continues says, "Satisfy us in the morning with your unfailing love, that we may sing for joy and be glad all of our days." Our days of wisdom are nothing if they are not filled with joy for you. So help us to be filled with joy. Help us to go out in peace, and help us to see our vocations as a calling from you and as important, and to be bold in what we do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you.